Hello, UX community. Welcome to this new format called Unfiltered UX. I'm Javier, and I'm here with the lovely Nina. We are together Astrolabium, and some of you might know us. We are tenured UXers, and we spend a considerable amount of time speaking to the UX community, helping them, coaching them, to help them improve. And so in our work as coaches, we find a lot of questions over and over again, either in the one-on-one coachings or also in the open door sessions we do. And so we figured we will make a new format where we answer some of these questions. Not only do we want to answer these questions, we also want to gather them. So you can submit your questions, you can vote on questions, and then in regular cadence, we will publish videos to answer those questions. And so this is the first time we do this. So we are going to do it in the typical Nina and Javier manner, which is free winging it. We will answer a question that we find a lot today. And in the future, we will use your questions that you have submitted to figure out what to do. So much for the intro. Nina, do you have anything to add?
Going to do it a bit more Javier and Nina style. We're going to actually not just answer the question, but also share our thoughts around the topic and what stood out to us about similar questions or topics that are adjacent to those questions.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things that Nina and I are good at, we don't have a lot of filters. So we are going to answer the questions as honest as you will find, even if sometimes that can hurt, because the truth sometimes is difficult. But we don't think that not talking about things will make it easier. All right, so let's start with the first question. We have picked our favorite question because we get it pretty much every time we do an open door. We get it in a lot of our coaching sessions. And the question is, does ATS reject my resume, my application? Nina, does ATS reject your application?
It hasn't rejected my application. And I think it's also one of our favorite questions because the answer is slightly changing over time since we started looking into that. When we first got those questions, we talked to lots of recruiters who were actually on the other side of the ATS, using the ATS to do their jobs. And the answer very clearly at that point was ATS is not rejecting your application. So maybe
we should start by explaining what ATS is,
exactly. Right? Let's just not use the acronym only, but explain what it stands for. So ATS is short for Applicant Tracking System. So essentially, it's really just a tool that companies and recruiters in particularly use to manage their side of the application process. That means they get applications from various candidates that are sent to them, and they put them either manually, nowadays not so manually anymore, into the system that follows a candidate through the entire process of submitting an application, being screened for fit to a particular position, and then there's information added to that as they go through the process of speaking to various people at the company, and then to a hopefully email that either rejects them or to an offer that they get from the company.
So it's like a CRM, right? So it's like a customer relationship management system, right? Like you're the customer, the applicant, and you get into that system, and it's a database where it says like Nina Weber. It has your materials, portfolio, resume, any additional information you had to submit, and then any additional information that gets generated over the process. Interviews, screenings, background checks, if they do something like that, right? And so on. And even if you apply multiple roles, that will be tracked there too. So Nina has applied to this role, or over time too, right? So you have I remember at Google, it was like you really could see like this person 5 years ago applied to those roles and did an interview and got rejected at that stage, or did get an offer but declined, like whatever it was. So you could see that in the system.
And that's a very important point, right? The ATS allows the recruiter very quickly to see also if you apply to different roles, for example, within the same company. So you want to be very mindful of like tracking that for yourself. Like if I've applied to at a company as a UX designer, I don't want to then turn around and apply at the same company as a UX researcher, because it sends a signal that I'm not very clear on the profile that I have for myself. And nowadays, with the tough market that we have, recruiters are really kind of allergic to seeing those kind of signals. So you want to really manage that on your side as well.
It's important for our listeners to understand that ATS is by itself, has nothing to do with AI, right? Now, you can build AI into your ATS to do specific tasks. Some ATSs already support some AI features, others not. Some companies have it, others not. You said it before when we started talking with recruiters a year and a half ago. All recruiters said, we're not using that yet, right?
They also said, though, we're really looking forward to the time that it does, right? Because they, as we as applicants have to get used to a new system where we have to send out way more applications than we used to in order to get an offer. Also, recruiters are faced with a different situation in that market, where when they had to like actively search for talent before, they're now really swamped with applications. And so for them, AI is something that obviously they look to in order to be more effective, more efficient in their jobs, and feeling less overwhelmed by that flood of applications that comes in when they post openings.
Exactly. That's important to understand. There will be more AI type of screenings involved in the hiring process in the future. Right now, it's not used that much, but it will increase in the future. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, it's also important to know that at the end, there will be a person looking at your stuff. Like there will be a recruiter looking. There might be a pre-screening that AI can do, but after that, a person will look at your resume. So you need to design your resume for that person. And I think that's important to understand. Like when we talk about ATS and the AI screening, most people, what they're asking is like, how do I need to design my resume so AI doesn't screen me out, right? They're afraid that they might design it in a way where AI goes like, no, that's not a match, right? Typical examples I've heard is you should not design your resume. It should not be looking nice. It should not have design elements. Or another thing is it should not have 2 columns, right? Because AI can't deal with that. Now that is just not true, because AI, what I do personally believe, AI is very often very dumb. It's not that dumb, right? It can deal with a designed resume. It can deal with 2 columns. And if you want to know that, just upload your resume to ChatGPT and ask it questions about your resume, and you will see that most of it will be correct. That is just an example for what happens when a candidate tries to optimize their resume for a black box. Because you do not know what AI is doing. You don't know if they're using it. You don't know how. You don't know what it will do. Now you're starting to optimize your resume for something you don't know, and you will start doing very crazy things with your resume just because you're desperate, right? The most likely reason why you were rejected is not ATS. It's because there were so many candidates that there were others that were a better match, or the company didn't even look at your resume because others stood out earlier in the process and you just were rejected, right? But now, because you don't know, you start to optimize for that and you start to change your resume in weird ways. So I've gotten resumes that were clearly designed for a machine, not for a human being. And so we had conversations with recruiters who said, like, please design it for me. Like if I get a resume that is so ugly that I can't barely read anything, right? That's not helpful to us, right? We are people. So design it for the recruiters. That's our main message. That is what you should have in mind.
Especially, of course, because you're applying for a UX role, right? So if you send in a CV that looks horrible, that's not readable, you're essentially telling the recruiter at that point, I don't know the basics of my job. You are producing something that is going to be example of how you do design, how you understand design. And if that is not working effectively, that is a very poor signal you want to avoid. at that stage.
So one thing is you don't know if a company is using AI to screen or not. So that's the first thing. Some do, some not, right? And also you don't know how. But we have found some examples of companies who do communicate how they're using AI in the process. And I want to read here one example of a company who says, when you apply, your profile goes through our AI-powered screening process designed to identify top talent efficiently and fairly. Our AI evaluates your CV, LinkedIn profile thoroughly, and analyzing your skills, experience, and achievements. It compares your profile to the job's core requirements and past success factors to determine your match score. Based on this analysis, we automatically shortlist the 3 candidates with the highest match on the role. When necessary, our human team may perform an additional manual review to ensure no strong profile is missed. So that sounds scary. When I read that for the first time, I was like, oh, that's scary. Only 3 people make it through this, right? And how do I play with that? But here's the thing, right? I don't think you have to play with that, right? What AI does is to match the requirements for the job with what you have in there, right? So what do you need to do? You need to describe well your experience, your skills, your education that matches this job description, which is something we have been preaching now for years, Nina, where you say like, well, take the role, look what they're looking for, and then you edit your resume to call out the things, the experience you have that matches those requirements. And when you do that, automatically AI will like put you in a higher ranking there because it will recognize, oh, okay, this person has this experience. Now, one thing that we've heard a couple of times, Nina, was the thing with the invisible text, right? Do you want to explain?
The white on white text.
Yeah, exactly.
So I find that super interesting where people say, you need to basically trick the AI or the ATS, the AI in the ATS or the ATS itself by adding information to your CV that makes it more likely for your CV to be picked out of the pile of all the applications by the recruiter, by adding keywords invisibly to kind of like say, I have that skill, I know that tool, whatever, right? That is looked for in the application. And yes, obviously, you can cheat like that. You can add keywords, you can add skills, experience that you don't really have invisibly to your CV. So you're going to have a higher likelihood of being called back by a recruiter. But then
only if the AI algorithm doesn't recognize that you're using white on white, which I think it should be pretty easy.
And I think that's the point, right? Like you could also do that with your CV without doing it invisibly. You could write that into your CV just like black on white, and like it would be readable to a human as well. But if that is picked up by the ATS in whatever way, right? And they think, yes, this candidate has that experience. They are going to ask you about that in the next step, where you're going to talk to either a human recruiter, which is still the most probable scenario, or then by some kind of AI that is going to do the screening interviews. And they are going to ask, where did you actually do that, right? Like, tell me about that experience that you put into your CV. And you will not be able to answer that honestly, affirmatively. So at that point, you're still going to be screened out. So what you're doing basically is you're optimizing for one single step in the entire process, and you're going to get a higher return rate there, right? But it's not going to help you land an offer because you still do not have that experience and those skills. So cheating the ATS is not a very smart move, because it's still going to be a very bad experience getting a no in the second step rather than not getting an answer in the first step then.
And I think that's the core point here. It's like cheating the ATS makes no sense, because if you're trying to tell I'm saying ATS now, right? The AI algorithm, cheating the AI algorithm makes no sense if you're trying to tell the AI algorithm that you have an experience that you don't, because that will come out in the process and you will not get that job, right? Now, optimizing your resume so it shows what the company is looking for is something that makes sense. And that's not connected to AI or human recruiter, because that will be helpful to AI and the human recruiter. If a human recruiter can quickly grasp that you have the right skills for that job, then the chances of you landing on the pile that they will look more closely at and eventually call back is much higher. At the end, what you need to do is the same, no matter if it's ATS or a human being, because ATS, if it's working correctly, will do what a human being will do, which is match what you have in your resume to the requirements, cross-check with your LinkedIn, other information available, and then decide, okay, is that person a potential match, right? So the core task stays the same. You need to optimize your resume to the job posting and not freak out about anything weird an algorithm might be doing with your resume.
I think that's a really important point maybe to call out even more clearly. Like you just said, if it is programmed the right way, if it is trained the right way, right? No matter how much AI there is in your ATS, if there is AI in there, it is there to make the job of the recruiter easier, not different. They are still going to look for candidates that match the requirements. That's what they are doing right now, humanly, manually, and they're looking to do that with the help of AI later on. But it still means they have requirements and they are looking for talent that matches those requirements. That doesn't change. So your job stays the same by telling and reframing how you talk about like your current experience, or your past experience in a way that makes it obvious that you're a good fit for that job. That doesn't mean inventing things that you haven't done. That means understanding for yourself, I've been telling my story in a certain way so far, but I can also tell it in a different way. I can shine a spotlight on aspects that haven't been so important in my past job, but I have done them anyways, right? I have that experience anyways. I'm just going to highlight it differently. I'm going to stress it differently. I'm going to make it more prominent because that is a key thing that they are looking for in this job that I'm applying for, that I'm interested in. That's not inventing new things. It's just reframing and highlighting different things.
And the question that sometimes comes is like, well, what if the AI algorithm is trained the wrong way and it screens for the wrong things? And I think the answer is simple. That's not your problem, right? You don't know that, right? There's no way for you to know if the AI is trained the right or the wrong way. Hopefully it's trained the right way. But if it's not, how will you optimize for that? You don't know it. It's a black box. You don't know anything, right? So starting to do weird things to try to optimize for that, right? For an algorithm that isn't working well, that's not your job, right? Then, okay, that's a bad company that bought bad software and that is using a bad screening mechanism, and they will maybe hire the wrong people. That's their problem. At the end, you cannot do their job. Right? So what you can do is only optimize your resume to what they're looking for, to what they're communicating to you, what they're looking for. You submit that, and then anything else, like that's in the black box.
And the likelihood that if it is programmed the wrong way, if it's trained the wrong way, the job is going to reappear on the market eventually, because then they are not finding what they are looking for, right? They might not have results, or they might hire the wrong person, and they are going to notice that the moment that they try and start working with that person, and then the job is going to be back on the market because they still have the problem that they wanted to originally fix.
All right. I would say let's call it a day for this episode. If you have questions, burning questions you want Nina and me to answer, you will find the link on the description of this video. And also you'll see it here. You can go to this link, submit your question, look at questions from others, vote on them. We will then take them. We will publish the video on our YouTube channel. We will share it on LinkedIn, on our Substack. So if you are part of those channels, you will get the latest episodes in regular cadence. We have not decided how often we will do that. It might depend on the amount of questions and on we just want to do it if we feel like it. That's it.
Cool.
Thank you for tuning in and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.